This is just one of the exciting new computer games that will be released internationally this year. Computer games have already eclipsed the combined profits of the music and film industries. They can come in a variety of formats, from the CD-ROM to the Super Nintendo cartridge. Different technologies to suit the needs of different markets. Let's go and find out how and why computer games are made. To find out a little bit more, we went to Beam Software to see how their latest Super Nintendo release, Radical Rex, was made.
Well, Radical Rex is really quite a cute little story, because what happened is that my son and his cousin came up with this idea for a new game, which at the time was called Baby T-Rex. They had the idea of a dinosaur who is a cool, hip little dude and rides a skateboard, and they had him set within a castle. So they did a few drawings and so on, and I brought it into the office, and we thought the idea had a lot of merit. Dinosaurs are, of course, always popular, and the basic idea seemed to be a really good one. So we then had Ian Malcolm, who's our designer, work on the concept and come up with a better storyboard, and we had people draw it. And we decided that it was worth taking a gamble with this product, because people were getting excited about it.
So everyone gets together and works out what the basic storyline concept is, what the characters will do, what sort of worlds the character will be put through. So, for example, this is a jungle world. We've also got swamps and inside a dinosaur and so on. And then once that's all worked out, in this case it was me, we'll actually go down and write up this whole document to give the idea across to publishers and so on.
So what's contained in the document?
Okay, we've got just the basic introduction. You've got the background storage of the whole thing. Then you go into the actual game, what makes the game work, and just details about the game, whether it's platform and so on. You'll go into, this is details about, this is more of a programming side of just what happens and when. And just go into the game itself, how one player and two player interact, and then you go into levels and the sprites. Just basically like the Triceratops that we saw before. It's just the details of how it moves, how it affects Rex, how strong it is, and that information is tallied down into the other creatures as well.
My real cool Radical Rex.
Well, basically what I did, and mainly for this project, was the animation sprites. Basically what it involves is anything like creatures or monsters or just our hero or something like that, anything that requires interaction with. Well, basically how I started was I had a concept in my mind of, say, what I was supposed to do. So I was originally asked to do, say, the actual creature, which was T-Rex. And so I visually sketched what he'd look like and sort of did a style sheet of how he would move and what all these different sort of animations and how would they look like. And then after I've done that, I sort of convert it to computer and animate them and just sort of play around with the animations and just to make sure that they're all working okay. And so I might have a character like that, and so I might take his leg and bring that leg down and put it down here and basically manipulate this screen so I can basically and sort of manipulate, take a leg out there and manipulate it so I move it down there, and then I finally get a smooth animation and flow. And unfortunately you don't have a lot of room to move because you've got all these memory constraints and things like that. All right, basically this is the sort of package we use. This has been specially written for us. What you've got here, you've got all these tools which you can use to manipulate the characters. So I might just pick sort of a little drawing tool, like a pencil, and I've got all these ranges of colours. And what I do is I might pick a colour and to use it to draw with, or I can sort of create squares or circles or fill in things. So apart from doing the main creature and getting him what to do, I have to also do all the enemies, and they have to fight him and then attack him and basically be obstacles in his way so he can complete his goal and defeat them.
Basically I do background graphics for the games, and the background graphics would start by building everything in squares. And it's basically like a big jigsaw puzzle, and you've got to join all the squares together. And you get your drawing tools. You can pick, like Damien, you can pick any colour you like. So you draw your graphic up. It might be a tree or an edge for the player to walk on. Here's bits of lava. Once that's fully rendered, you'd end up with something like this, which is all the graphics for the jungle level of T-Rex and all the different parts, and they all join together, all the palm trees. You've got to draw them in matrix mode, which means it's in sort of in this square and it's a chunk, and that's how the map builders use all the art and join it all together like a big jigsaw puzzle, so you can stick that bit on the edge and you'd start to build your world up. This is the screen that I'm going to draw in, and these are the palettes. So if I go into the palettes at the side, I can create my palettes. You can also pinch palettes, so if you've already drawn some artwork, you can quite happily pinch the palette. Stick it in down here, down the side. So to create a new graphic, there's the grids, which allow you to, everything's drawn in a char, right? And you can only have a certain amount of these in the game. At the moment, we're looking at 700 to 800 of them. So there's a sort of a rough start. And once you've got that, you can start, you zoom out in a bit and the grid's off. This would be the basic start of your level. So this is the swamp level in the Genesis version with the water down the bottom. Vines that you climb up, slopes you slide down or climb up. Spikes that you jump on and you die. Trees that you can slide, tumble down through. So it's your swamp. Your jungle would look like this in the end. So you had your lava pits down the bottom that you'd jump in. You have your slopes. You have your trees that you'd walk behind. That's your jungle background. You've got to do a background and a foreground. So each one has a background and a foreground.
Ready, go. Excellent.
With the maps, I did 4 of the levels, or 5 of the levels. And basically all you do is you get all the artist pieces that they've drawn, and you fit them together in ways that you think will be interesting for the player to go through. So, for example, with this one, we've set up slopes, skateboard runs. There are going backwards a little bit. You've got steps, large drops onto springs, and the artist has put all the components together, drawn all these extra parts there, and a different artist has actually drawn the sprites, all the things that actually move on the game, and it's our job just to place them all together.
We print the maps out like this so that we don't have to have a look at them on the computer all the time. Actually, on the computer you can only see a certain part of the map, so it's quite hard to get the feel of the overall thing.
What I've done with this map's actually finished, but I've added an extra part to the end of it, a blank section. So what you'll first start doing, remove all the sprites, and then you'll start selecting parts that you'll need. So just say if we wanted a slope to happen, we'll cut a section of slope out and go back to our area, then place that down. So now you see, if you get a close-up.
What you're looking at here is what I just showed you on the floor before on paper. And you can see why we have to print them out, because you can only see a little tiny section of the map.
He's my real cool radical Rex. He's my real cool
what we do is I usually get most of the music done fairly early in the process, and then as the project evolves, we will then go through and we'll edit it and change things, and as the graphics change, we might change the music slightly. As new moves come in, we look at new sound effects. So I guess I'm doing the music for the life of the game as we're programming the game, but generally it's all done in the first couple of months, and then as the game evolves, I'll go through and just make the little edits and changes that we need. That'll do for the purposes of, okay, that's recorded. Now, what I'm doing is recording that basically the same as what you would record anything in the recording studio. This sequencer is just like a big tape recorder, really. There's the drums that we just recorded. Okay. Once we've got the sounds in there, we have some programs in here, which this will bring up my score. So we then enter all the information into this score here, which that tells me what tracks are what the sounds are, how many voices. On the Super Nintendo, we're only allowed to have 8 voices, but so we allocate the voices to what sounds we want. I think music in a platform game like this, it has the same importance as what it does in movies, really, in as much as it sets the atmosphere of the world for the world that you're in. And of course, in these sort of games, we have various different worlds. You know, T-Rex has the swamp, has the jungle, has the inner works, or the dinosaur gut, if you want to put it that way. And I mean, we try and design the music to try and set up the atmosphere for each of those worlds. So, for instance, the jungles, we have congas and jungle drums going. And for the inner works, it's a lot of sort of echo, repeat sort of, you know, sounds and just things that try and work for the atmosphere of the part of the game that we're in.
We've got several groups of programmers who work on a game. There's the system programmers who handle all of the getting graphics onto the screen, doing the scrolling, and then there's the script programmers who actually handle programming the individual creatures in the game. And then there'll be one person who's in charge of doing the player control, which is the programming for the main character in the game. Essentially, every creature and the main player are their own individual programs being run by the system, which has been developed by the systems programmers. The system programmers have also written the scroll system, which moves the screen around and always keeps Rex in the centre.
How many megabytes of memory does this game take up?
This is an 8 megabit cartridge. That includes all the graphics, which is being compressed and gets uncompressed while the program's running, so that enables us to get a lot more graphics into the game. Yeah, it also includes the sound. The code is the smallest part of that memory usage. You have to tell the game machine what to do at all stages. Computers are pretty dumb, really. They have to be told absolutely everything to do, and without the program they can't do any of it. You write sets of instructions like a recipe, really, and the instructions have got conditions on whether they should happen. Like if he's in the air, then he can't jump, and if he can jump, then you've got to tell it what jumping involves. Jumping involves starting a particular animation and setting a particular velocity, and telling the system that he'll now be affected by gravity. It's got animations, it's got background scrolling, it's got sound effects which have to be played, it's got animations of the background which have to play. You've got creatures moving around, a lot of things that have to be done. Everything on the screen has to be programmed. You've got the panel, all this has got to be programmed, this bar here has got to take account of how much life force Rex has got left. Each one of these bugs is running a program which tells it to fly around semi-randomly. Rex, even when he's doing nothing, occasionally taps his foot. That's got to be programmed. The score has to be updated, the screen has to be moved, and the sound effects have to be played, and the music has to be played. What we've got here is what we call a script for one of the creatures in the game. This creature is the cell, which is based on an amoeba. And we start out by programming by setting a number of flags which are associated with the creature. And these specify the way the creature will interact with the environment it's in, which in this case is the inside of a dinosaur. Now we tell the system by loading the flags variable, doing some changes to it, and then saving it again. And the changes we've done here are setting background collisions on, which means this creature will be signalled when it hits the inside walls of a dinosaur or anything else in the background. It's also got its body box and its weapon box turned on. And these boxes define regions of the creature which define its body and its weapon. And the body is the part of the creature which can hit other creatures and then take damage from that, and its weapon is the part of its body which does damage to other creatures. Then we set its initial velocity and load a particular background collision routine. We store the address of this routine in a standard location in the mob, and the mob is what we call the animation objects, also called sprites traditionally. And the background collision routine we've decided to use for this is called solid detect, and that means that whenever the creature hits anything solid, it will get a message. Then we do a wait. We wait for the cell to hit something, and we wait for 60 seconds. So a wait is a condition in which the program, a state in which the program stops executing and won't start again until it receives a particular signal. So we've got the signals and we test to see which one we got. We do a bit test on background collision, and if we received a background collision, then we go to the part of the program which bounces the cell. If we didn't get a background collision, then we must have had a delay, and then we go and we wait for these conditions here. We wait for a stop condition, a background hit condition, a mob struck, or a delay.
Radical Rex. He's my real cool Radical Rex.
So Cameron, what exactly is quality assurance?
Well, quality assurance is basically just testing. We get the project in various stages of development, from the very early stages to the very late stages, like this one. And our job is to play it and play it and play it again, finding problems, suggesting ways they could be fixed. In addition to that, we also make gameplay suggestions so that the game plays better. But really, our prime function is to check for problems. For example, in a platform game such as this one, common problems are things like the main character falling through platforms that he's supposed to be able to walk on, getting to places he shouldn't be able to get to. So like, we'll spend hours just jumping around, testing all the joints of the platforms and testing all the various places of the map, even places you're not meant to go to, and pressing stupid combinations of buttons and resetting the machine and just doing anything ridiculous we can think of to try and make it crash. Yeah, we had all the common platform game faults of him falling through platforms. We've had creatures wandering off into space. We've had the game crashing for various reasons. We've had things disappearing and appearing. Like, you get corruption of the graphics, things going funny colours. Anything and everything is possible.
So when you've identified something wrong with it, how do you go about fixing it?
Well, the first stage is really we videotape all our testing as we're doing it. And so when we find something, we'll go and check it out on the tape to see if it really was a problem or not. And get the programmer down to have a look. He'll look at the tape, and together we'll try and nut out what the problem is, what's causing it.
Before Nintendo and Sega came along, it was pretty much anything goes in terms of what developers of computer games could put onto a game. They won't allow any game to be published for their machines if there's any problems with excessive violence, sexism, any reference to alcohol, any reference to any drugs, and so on. So they've become a watchdog body for any games published for their systems. Now, we would never want to publish any games which breach those guidelines in the first place. At the moment, there are no official ratings for computer games. In the UK, an industry association has been set up where the industry association will be rating the games and the publishers will be determining which categories they fall in. I think that some kind of self-regulation is likely to occur. Radical Rex is really a cartoon, so we're not really making a very serious cultural statement here. It's really more fun. And what we're saying is, well, let's imagine a world where dinosaurs succeeded. The basic storyline is that Radical Rex is trying to save the world from the invasion of the mammals. So we're trying to imagine what happens if the mammals hadn't succeeded and the dinosaurs were the dominant form. So it's sort of, it's got a subtle environmental message in trying to imagine what would be, but it's not a serious cultural message, and we're not trying to come across in that way. It's just fun.
I think games offer a very compelling way to use computers for people to communicate. I think that the importance of games in the educational field as a means of communication are grossly underestimated and misunderstood. I think that the biggest problems really are cultural and in some cases generational.
But I think not too far in the future, I'd say less than 10 years, certainly less than 20, computer games are going to be an integral part of the family system. You see, what board games were 5 or 10 years ago, computer games will be in 5 years in the future. And not only that, computer games are going to be a very important educational tool. Right now, they are just more of an entertainment tool, something that's not really important. It's more of a spurious side of an industry that could be a lot bigger. But certainly in the future, they will be a very important part of our society as a result of being used as educational tools and family cohesive tools.
Radical Rex is now ready for marketing both here and overseas. Because games are a fashion industry, its shelf life could be as short as 3 weeks. A big risk with a $500,000 product which was 2 years in the making. But if it meets consumer needs, it will be successful and could reap huge profits for Beam Software. Let's recap. Beam recognised a concept which would be marketable. The script was written, the main characters and their worlds were drawn. Maps were constructed, giving Rex obstacles to overcome. Music and sound effects were added to enhance gameplay. The program was written to instruct the computer on gameplay. Extensive testing was conducted to check for any problems. Censorship, ethics, and issues such as violence were considered, and communication possibilities explored.
Six frogs are sitting on the bank. 5 frogs are in the mud hole. The question is, what's the total?
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Wow, this is great fun. It's an educational-based CD-ROM game called the Frolicking Frogs.
Would you like to do another one?
Another computer game, but this time specifically designed for a particular education market. We went to the Melbourne headquarters of Imagi Graphics to find out a little bit more.
The research that we did wasn't specific to the Frolicking Frogs. We were aware that, and we felt that, there was a market for interactive children's books. The research we did, in fact, involved travelling overseas, mainly to the US, to some user conferences and seeing what was happening over there. And the feeling we got from all of these conferences was that the publishing world was what the traditional book publishing world was ready to go electronic. They only had to be told that they were ready. I mean, we really had to we started from the book, and all that happened to do for us is establish the look and feel. We had to, in our minds, we thought that the CD-ROM should at least, and the setting of the CD-ROM should appear as the book does. What we really needed to start with, putting together a CD-ROM is a little bit like making a small movie. What we needed to start with was a script. And even before that, we had to establish what sort of activities we would incorporate in the book, because this is an education title. So we worked with the author of the original book, and together we came up with some activities.
The story is a story about these frogs who are characters jumping in and out of a pond, and we wrote the story because we wanted to have children see some idea of addition and subtraction for very young children. And as a result of that story, then we got the idea of, well, it would be better to show the action really in animation rather than having children pretend that these frogs are jumping in and out of a pond by turning the pages of a book. What we did was to write what we call a storyboard, where we actually try to show the kinds of things that we want to see on the computer screen, and then write the what you hear on the screen, and then we have to give the action descriptions for the people who are going to do the programming. And we virtually have to do that for each scene. Now sometimes there are very little changes, so you can get away without having to have a lot of extra drawings. And then I discuss those with the producer for this and the people who are going to do the animating, and then I have to go back and rewrite a lot of the things based upon what is not easy to do on a computer, or what is easy to do. Sometimes it's easier to do the animation than it is to do music and sound.
Frolicking frogs began.
Theo.
Hello. How are you?
Can you explain to me what you did for Frolicking Frogs, please?
Okay. Well, we basically started off with a book, which was already out in the market, and we needed to reproduce the book into a computer format that will end up being on a CD. Now, the way we did this, it took us a little bit of time to work out the most effective way, because within the book there's a lot of watercolours, and we tried to keep the original feel of the book. We went to the artist at Mimosa to recreate the images, and basically what we did, we tried to get these images onto the computer. Now, the way we do that is we scan them, but the problem being that once you scan it, it's not going to end up looking the same as you see it here, because of the different colours that you can get on the computer and the way the computer handles colours. Once we got that down, we basically had to get all the frogs illustrated. We originally thought we'd try and keep it in watercolour as well, but what ended up happening is that the frogs blended with the background too much. So we wanted to make the frogs actually feel as if they're jumping out. So then we went back to what we originally were going to do, and was basically get line work done, scanned in at the appropriate size. Now, the size is very important, because, I mean, when you're dealing with, say, hundreds of illustrations, if each frog's going to be a different size, it's really going to throw everything out. After we got all that down, the artist went away and basically did hundreds of drawings. Now, so what we needed was a start frame. Now, the start frame of the jumping in sequence was different to the start frame of when the book started, because they all do little animations as well. So basically, like this frog here would end up just lifting its hands up, right, and then just throwing itself in the air and jumping. So they're the steps that were involved in that animation. Like I said, all these were drawn at, say, roughly the same size. Then I'd take them, I'd bring them into the computer, and then I'd colorise them.
Down by the pond one rainy day,
now,
10 frogs were
the way this story is broken up is basically we've taken it as a page type thing, so we can allow the teacher or the child, whoever's running the program, to be able to stop, actually read the words, have a look at the graphics, and basically understand the story, instead of just running them through it. And if they miss something, they're not going to go through the whole story just to catch that little bit. So we thought if we break it up, so all they need to do is click on an arrow down the bottom, and there's an exit button. You couldn't make the animations very difficult. You couldn't make them very intensive, because even though it would work on this machine, because it's a very powerful machine, when you would put on CD and you'd take it out to a school where they'd have the lower end machines, it wouldn't work. Basically what you need to do is you learn, like, through experience, that what you can get away with, what you can't. Basically doing a couple of tests along the way, I would do an animation, then take it on the lower end machine, play it on that. If it works, come back, and then I can apply that to certain other areas within that program. But because we're talking about distributing it on a CD, all we needed to do was keep it at the lowest denominator of what it can do, and then we knew that it would run on every machine.
Basic role that I played was creative director. So what that entails is sitting down with the initial meeting with the client, Chris, which you met earlier, and figuring out, or just basically really listening to what the client, what his needs were. Then coming up with a creative concept, the look, the feel, being able to take an item that's already published as a book and then put it into a new medium.
We have a total within this program of 24 cells, which is in, like, traditional animation. If you placed the cells on top of each other, that's what effectively you're doing in the computer. The higher up you are, as in like number 1 is like the furthest in the back. So if you could imagine like a book, there'd be all just sheets and number 1 would be the last one. So in this case we have number 1 being the background, and things that animate need to be brought forward and they'll animate in front of the background. Now with the numbers here, what they correspond to is if there's no change within all these frames, because it runs from left to right just like a normal movie with all the frames, if there's no animation, if there's no change in that character, it'll stay all the same. But if we go down here, we see that the numbers start changing. Basically what that means is that the frog in the centre is changing and it's jumping, and you can actually see that on the score as well as on screen. Now when we get to this point, he doesn't move anymore, so we have that same cast member. And then at that point, the other one starts moving and you can actually see within the score. So I can basically look at the score and tell you what's going to happen without even looking on the screen. The way a lot of people interpret this is that it's like reading music. Like if you show me music, I wouldn't know what it means, but to someone who does, they can basically tell you exactly what it says, and that's the way this works. So the score is very important, and it's basically where everything is done within the program.
We asked for 2 characters. They had to be American actors specifically for this project because it was targeted at the American market. And we got back the audio in DAT form, digital audio tape. We would then input that into the computer and splice it up and put the audio within the program where it was supposed to be. It then hit us that we had to do the whole thing again for Spanish, which was very much an issue with the Californian market especially. So what we did then, we had everything translated into Spanish, not only the audio but all of the written words, and we incorporated a choice at the beginning of the CD-ROM as to whether people wanted to run through it in English or Spanish.
And how seriously were gender, cultural and environmental issues taken, if at all, with Frog?
It was very seriously taken, but because they are characters and we mixed and matched male and female, and we didn't always put the male character in the dominant role, we're very careful. In fact, the publisher was very careful to inform us that if there is a typically male activity going on in the CD, then we should have the female doing that, and so on. And as far as environmental issue, I don't think that really cropped up. I mean, by merely going on to CD rather than paper, we are saving a few trees, I suppose.
Is the industry ethical? And are there any censorship rules or government regulations or policies that you must stick to in creating a game like this?
Is it ethical I don't know if it is or not. Where, in the education area, which is really where we've come from, it is very, very strict. I mean, if we want the product to in fact be sold, it must follow the curriculum, and if it drifts away from that curriculum, it will not be approved for sale. So that's very important. We're very conscious of the fact to not include any sort of violent action or even naughty action on the CDs, and teachers are very, very particular about that. So that's pretty much as far as we got into that side of it. The publisher is very much aware of the constraints and ethics, if you like, for their particular market. There was at one stage we wanted to create a menu, and on that menu, as a button was pushed, we thought we would have a male frog throw a baseball or even hit a baseball across to the other side of the screen, and we would have the female catching it, and we were told to do it the other way.
I think, as I said before, I think computer games should certainly be censored and rated as such, but I don't believe that it is appropriate for the games to be rated by people who don't have any interest in the software. People who are rating the games must actually have an understanding of the concepts of a computer game to rate them. As I said before, a game like Mortal Kombat 2 it is inherently violent, in fact incredibly violent. A lot of that violence is not just shock value, it's meant to be distraction value. While you might see, you know, some blood fly off a person's face and hit the ground, you'll be watching that blood while the character will come along and hit you on the screen and knock you over. And I think that to take out the blood out of a game like Mortal Kombat is like taking the sound out of a great movie like Star Wars. It takes away a lot of the atmosphere.
In the pilot trials that we've set up, the children are actually fighting to get onto the computer. The mere fact that it's different, it talks to them, it asks them to do something. They don't think they're in a mathematics class any longer. They think they are having fun. They are having fun, and really that's the advantage of CD-ROM and other interactive mediums at the moment. Children at the levels that we're talking about have been brought up on the video game. They're not scared to play with a computer and push a button. The fact is that, you know, you can stand in front of someone and you can talk to them, but some children will soak it in, some children will soak part of it in, and others just won't even think of it at all. But if the children are in fact taking part in an activity, then they're touching it, they're feeling it, they're hearing it, they're a part of it, and a lot more of it will stick. I think the teacher and the teacher role will very much continue, but they need to come to grips with the technology. Some are, some completely reject it, but in much the same way as we thought that the CD-ROM of the Frolicking Frogs should add value to the book and they should work hand in hand, it's the same thing that I think that the teachers need to look at interactive material as just another tool, just as they see their blackboard.
But I think not too far in the future, I'd say less than 10 years, certainly less than 20, computer games are going to be an integral part of the family system. You see, what board games were 5 or 10 years ago, computer games will be in 5 years in the future. And not only that, computer games are going to be a very important educational tool. Right now, they are just more of an entertainment tool, something that's not really important. It's more of a spurious side of an industry that could be a lot bigger. But certainly in the future, they will be a very important part of our society as a result of being used as educational tools and family cohesive tools.
Eventually, I see a little black box, a little communications box. I don't know who will control that box, but I think it will sit in between a normal television system and the telephone system. And via this little black box, I think that what will happen is that teachers, for example, will be able to key in the Frolicking Frogs, and it will come from some data bank someplace. It will be downloaded into this black box, and it will be used in the classroom via the television system. The same thing, I think, will happen in the homes.
This finished CD-ROM, The Frolicking Frogs, took 6 months and $90,000 to complete. It will now be packaged along with some teacher notes, the original book, and some educational aids, and distributed via its publisher, Mimosa. Its success will depend on how well it's answered the market's call for an interactive educational tool. Let's go over those steps again. First, a market was identified. The script was written from the original book, keeping to the same storyline. Then the characters were drawn and developed. Then their movements were programmed using a system of numbers. Dialogue and music was then recorded onto digital audio tape. Issues such as sexism and violence were important because of its intended market, and communication channels were encouraged.